there was an important analogy between God, the king, and dad. You know, dad being a colloquialism for the father. The metaphor of the Commonwealth goes further. So as God is the dad, is the father and head of the whole universe, so the king is the father and head of the Commonwealth, or commonweal, and the father is the head of the family. You know, you have a series of homologies, and these homologies embed patriarchy, hierarchy, the hierarchical relationships between people of different statuses, between people of different ages, and between men and women, embedded in this concrete metaphor of the body. If one of the limbs goes sick, then the whole body suffers. This was a frequent metaphor against rebellion, for example. If the peasants start rebelling, they're poisoning the whole body politic, the whole ritual structure. Now, what I'm arguing is that, and I'm taking too long, and I'm going to wind up as quickly as possible, is that for reasons which we can historically analyze, at a time that we can historically analyze, these terms began to shift their meaning quite radically. Religion, which had been a totality encompassing church, state, king, priest, ecclesiastical and civil courts, and all walks of life, which were all conceived as service to God, since about 1680, began to get transformed in various very powerful discourses into different meanings. So that religion came in the discourse initiated by people like John Locke and William Penn, came to refer to an inner, private, personal quest for salvation in a future life. An inner, private, personal relationship with God, as distinct from what Locke and Penn would typically call the magistracy, but they also use the term politics, meaning the order of human relations in society as distinct from religion. Now, what they were doing here was not only transforming the meaning of religion and privatizing it, but they were separating it from what up until then, and indeed for long after, continued to be an integrated, holistic concept. They were actually inventing the non-religious. And this, for me, is the most significant part of this. That it is the idea of the non-religious, which is the most crucial invention here, that religion and non-religion are being separated out into two different domains. Now, these were new ideas. They were discourses which were seeking to persuade people to see the world differently. And we need to ask, why did these individuals, quite powerful individuals, by the way, feel the need to develop this discourse? And I would say that we have to look to what was happening between England and North America, where both John Locke and William Penn had colonial interests. John Locke was chair of the Board of Trade and Colonies, and he had colonial interests. William Penn, of course, was the founder of Pennsylvania, and he wrote the Bills of Rights and the state constitution of Pennsylvania, where these ideas were embodied. In Virginia, in Pennsylvania, for example, they had these ideas of a separation between private religion and the public rationality of politics in the states, where it actually went into the Bills of Rights and then into state constitutions, and they ended up finally in the US Constitution, which is the most important rhetorical statement of this distinction between religion as a private right and the public state. And the US Constitution, and something similar happened in France in the Revolution, were widely copied around the world. Japan, for example, was told in the 1860s, 70s, that it was a mark of civilization to have a constitution, a written constitution, that separates religion and politics. Because according to the dominant powers at the time, there were three classes of nations. There were the civilized nations, which was basically Western Europe, North America, particularly Protestant Europe, Protestant North America, because the Catholics, you have to remember, were superstitious barbarians. If you read actually, a lot of the most venomous Protestant invective was not against Hindus and Muslims, it was against Catholics. They were the first target. The Japanese were told, but you're only semi-civilized, you're semi-barbarous. You may consider yourself to be an ancient literate culture, but you don't have a constitution which separates religion and politics. And if you really want to be taken seriously as a civilized nation, then you better hurry up and institutionalize one. So the Japanese were actually usually 2 or 3 steps ahead of the Americans and the British, but they had to react. They saw Hong Kong, they saw what was happening in China, India, and so on. They had to act pretty fast. So they had a public debate. How do you translate this English term religion into Japanese? Because as far as the Japanese were concerned, religion meant Christianity. But they were asking themselves, well, what is religion in Japan? And the other question is, well, what is politics? You know, what is the secular? What is the non-religious? And they had a great job in coming up with words for this purpose, because the Japanese had their own perfectly good ways of organizing their world. So what I want to just close by saying is that these highly ideological terminology is now embedded as a so-called scientific discourse, neutral categories of description and analysis of any society in the world. And that seems to me to be highly questionable, and we need to turn our attention not to some supposed entities that exist in the world, but to the actual use of language and the power behind certain discourses, the reasons why certain discourses are so powerful. And I would like to make a suggestion that the discourse on religion has the consequence. The modern discourse of religion has the consequence, intended or unintended, of generating an idea of the non-religious secular, which makes everything seem completely natural, as though it is just in the nature of things. Okay, thanks very much.